I'll try to thread through a lot of bits of your life, and you know, trust, you know, very embarrassing you to put up. I'll try not to educate. Listen, where did it all start, this business of coaching? Were you a teacher? And how did it all start?
No, I'm married to somebody who used to be a teacher, so everybody thinks I was, but I wasn't. In 1983, my then 9-year-old daughter came home from school with a piece of orange paper and said, Mummy, can I do any little athletics? And I just took it down the local park and go, God, we're living here in a town about 1,800 people, just South Cairns or Boonville, so started in that little town. Now that's just part of Cairns. We're 26 miles in the town.
And so did you think the coaching side at that point? Because my second question was why athletics. I guess you've done the second question first. But what could make you want then to continue walking?
Well, in that first year, that the club was really quite boisterous, and we had several variety of people running it, and it was their second year, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and one lady gave me a job, and so the whole season I pulled the tape was just read the discus circle. So I thought that was pretty boring. So I couldn't really get to see what my daughter was doing unless we were doing discus. And then at the end of that season, the people running the club decided to change from a Sunday morning to a Wednesday afternoon. And even though we lived in this town south of Cairns, I actually worked for an airline on the northern side of Cairns. And so there was no way that I was going to be able to get this little 9-year-old to a Wednesday afternoon session, which was starting at 4 to school. So there was another family that was in a similar situation, and so we started making inquiries about starting up Republic Cairns, because in Cairns, which was then a city of 80,000 people, they had a very strong amateur athletics club that had been going like 30 years already, and so that's little athletics centres popped up in all the little towns surrounding Cairns, but there was nothing in Cairns. And so we started making inquiries that we got to leave it from the amateur athletics club. But eventually, we got it thrilling. And so I started the Cairns Little Ace Club then. And we had 83 kids in the first year. I had a little Jevonite, which is, just a small car. And we managed to get hold of 30 hurdles, and I used to take them down in 6 at a time on the back seat of my Jevonite down to the local school oval. So it was really fun.
Okay, so what you were into coaching now and you've started your own club. When was the first time that you realised you could coach well?
I haven't.
Let me help the question. I was trying to do for other coaches when doing it was following other people's prescriptions. I thought I was beginning to start getting things going. And then one day, a young girl was coaching Myra, and then some people know Myra. She now the head of sports sciences at Loughborough. She broke the Scottish record, so you can sport us in the long jumping. And I remember standing at the back of the back straight, thinking, and do.
Actually, after 2008, when Sally won the silver medal, our Australian Sports Commission had this program up and running called ECDB. It was Elite Coach Development Program, and I was then the recipient of some funding, and I came across to the ACA conference in Gladstone in October of that year, and I also identified, like they asked me to identify areas that I wanted to improve in, and I told them that I wanted to see sports science. So off I went to this guy who frightened me. I'd heard him speak at a conference, and he was do this, don't do that. He was like, I was really scared of him, and I thought, oh, I'm going to go to see. Maybe he's going to frighten it out of me. But I went to see him, and I sat down and said to him that I actually thought I was a little bit of a fraud a lot of the time, and that Sally was doing really well despite my coaching. And So I had 4 sessions with him, and we ended up not speaking about Sally and Daniel because I was also at the time pretty scared about our brand new high performance manager, and because I'd seen him screaming at an athlete at Canberra, use that instead of Collinsworth. and now I would walk beside Eric Hollingsworth and to the edge of the earth. He's just been amazing, and we've got a really, really good relationship. So
It wasn't an easy athlete to coach.
he was pretty impressed when Frank made me the other night. He was sitting down with her. Frank, great deal. Can you send a word? So no, I mean, for a lot of people, he's not easy to work with either. But if you're upfront with him,
That was very straightforward.
yeah, and I'm blocked the last 4 years. He supported me so much, but I think, and I ended up talking to the sports psych about Eric and that I've been offered the position of team coach, which I'd never been before. I went to boating as the person coach. So I was offered a position of team coach for obviously the hurdles and also for the relays, and that's, sort of unnerved me a little bit. So I spent the 4 sessions mostly talking about that and personality types and how I can try and get an angle on what sort of personality types I was dealing with and how I might best get the best out of them and of the relay girls. So I guess I don't think upper fraud anymore, but I really certainly do think that the lies are playing.
And I couldn't agree with you more. There is a while where you're just not sure where the switch comes at one point. But you mentioned, Roy, that Eric and so on, big influence in terms of technical coaching, because I know overseas is learning with around working close with people from a technical point of view.
Very interesting. Last night I was walking through the tunnel from the Walmart truck to the main stadium, the Sally, and a guy from him, and he had under a uniform on, but he spoke quite good English, came sort of running up behind us and tapped something on the shoulder and congratulated me. And the guy walking ahead of us must have heard this conversation and worked out that it was Sally behind him. And so he stopped until they caught up to him, and he congratulated Sally and congratulated me, and I'm standing there looking at his name tag, and I went, oh my God. And I just went like a stupid little teenager. I went, oh, I'm so honoured to meet you. And probably my first influence in male coaching was a video called TracyCon.
Uncas,
P3. And I met him on start. I didn't even know, I didn't know how old the video was. I thought, it was one of the first videos ever made. And so he could be dead a long time, but here he was standing in front of me, and I'm just this is just a wow.
But it's a good point. One of the things that I had a few fights with the IAAF about was that they seem to make it a routine better in life to lose films. So TracyCon came out right at the back of Rendezvous de l'été. I mean, you remember them with people, which was a huge influence on me. Just on trying to, because the French did it as an artistic version of how you coach your planets. And do you think I could find that movie now? It's just such an important movie. But you're right. So was it watching the technical aspect of how it ran?
Yeah, definitely. Even though he was a mad builder, and I quite seriously adapted a different technique for female hurling. But the thing that impressed me the most was smoothness, the rhythm, the line and trajectory, all of that sort of stuff. It was really good. And I guess from that moment on, I thought that if you're going to be quick, then you have to be as linear as possible and get rid of all the airline wings, aircraft wings.
Was there some to remind us, 76 Peter?
It was definitely back in the 70s. Well, I started coaching at 83, maybe 4 years, and got hold of that video from Tony Weiss in about 80, all the way up to about 85. I But yeah, it's and I'm sitting there looking at that man last night, and I could picture the whole entire video.
Yeah.
Every corridor is it's surreal. So yeah, it's asking for his autograph or something. Like, well, but I tell you what, Sally just grabbed my phone. But she realised that it was someone that was really important to me. Just grabbed my phone and took a photo of this. Look,
Great. Awesome. That's
I hadn't had the taste of was up on Facebook today. Today's just been insane. But and Roy Boyd from Australia has been a pretty big influence, and in the early years and that, and I guess I probably should feel a little bit ashamed to say I'm not that I'm trying probably for the last 10, 12 years I've just gone with the way I do this.
But the thing of too, you briefly clearly went thorough eventually and you came on to it. I think Keith was the first person I was aware of upon one the action of the hurdle. We could always talk the action into the angle, but with the strike of the string was primarily most of it.
Fast. And good recovering position as well, it's drop weight in position.
But just taking the technique then, how conscious is that man with Sally? What on the active strike or something?
Very, very. But it's set up, so there's not a lot you can do once you're left around, I guess. If the trains too much of what's eventually going to happen, but the position of a takeoff, the position of the hips, position of your arms, the shoulders, the forward knee, all of that assists in and are really fast and focusing.
What about training systems? Because that's you've got obviously an influence of the technique for these guys. What about training program?
I've never actually looked at a training program with anyone else. And I tried quite a few times to read it reports. Story. So I heard a book by Brent Farthing.
Oh yeah,
and
the Brother's Bible.
Well, I call it the Bible. I don't know if it's all that. And I got a lot of stuff out of there about technique, but I looked at the programs and I was just overwhelmed. And I was dealing with kids back then as well, and I thought, well, that's not for me and not for the kids that I'm coaching. The amount of work that they were doing, that sort of thing. So I just developed my own, and I just kept developing.
But I suppose at some point we were very grateful that in addition to his skills as the feather duster and ironing and doing the washing and dishes and things, that your husband fixes very smart.
And he's really fit for that stuff. He's bad boy.
For 10.5 weeks he's been at home keeping the place.
And I couldn't murder.
But what about
He looks after his strength training in the gym. Yeah. And he does her plyometric sessions, and I do everything else. I do all the programming, all the track sessions, all the technical sessions. So yeah, no, I've been fortunate that I've been coaching selling now. We've just started our 14th year. So I've developed a child athlete and taken us through where it's a senior athlete, and I've had quite a few opportunities along the way to look at medicine for some medical things like peaking, things like that. And Australia, please, we have a domestic season that finishes, well, it used to always finish in March. The last couple of years is finishing in April, and they're going to try and stick with that early to be in April. And then, so when she was younger, you'd then after peaking March or the qualifying, then you'd have to keep into line for the World Youth or the World Junior Championships. And then school sport in Australia was far better than club sport. Massive. Absolutely massive. Has been. There's been a really, really significant turnaround in the last 2 years. But prior to that, the school national championships were the biggest event in the country. And so that was December, first weekend of December. So we was repeating. So I had very good practice out of it in the early years and sort of just getting it right. With not just Sally, but with our whole...
Is this really a disadvantage for Australian athletes to go on here?
the stretching mode of the season?
Well, certainly when they're young, I think so. I think that's a big problem in Australia with Australian athletes, is that they just don't have that repeatability, race by race and season by season and peak by peak. So, I think I try and tell them to chase those 3 peaks with dust at it, because I think as a developing athlete, it's good for it. And it's worth it in time to work a bit and then come peak for 3 different things. So I can't see anything wrong with it. Once they become senior athletes and they finish school, which in most of Australia now is 18, some states, Queensland, Moran, there's still a significant number of kids who are 17 finishing school, but mostly 18. Once they get into, say, under 20 and open rates, then a 2-peak season, I still don't see a problem with that. Australians wheeze about it, but you look at Europe and the US, and they have stick-ball indoors. We don't have indoors, but we have a domestic season. So I can't see, I can't see why anyone should think it's a problem.
Okay, well, let's think this way. It was in these 14 years of Sally working with you, in these 20 years, there's been a fairly substantial difference in the longitude aspects of TFL season. We didn't used to have Diamond League work weeks were almost round a year. So the traditional picture of athletics having with 8 months of preparation and 3 months of competition, that kind of went out the window. Has that had any impact?
Well, it has. We have to pick and choose dominantly meets, because May is part of what it does. We've had enough time after nationals to get another basic, and the base is really important. And so we don't chase dominate. We don't do the whole for series. In fact, last year we did 4, which she did 4. Let's stop saying. Last year she did 4, and this year she's done in Oslo, Paris, and London, and meant to do Stockholm and Fana and Zurich. So it's always MB5. So that's not a great deal of raceable, although they got to Oslo this year. And
but that's careful management. I have to say there's some coaches that are not able to do that because the athletes one day come along and...
That's true. That is really true. And I've tried to impress myself so she's realised that this is her job now. It's to career, it's to hold income. But she still has to be mindful of her limitations.
So let's roll the clock back.
You said 14 years ago.
When was
When's the first time we were aware that she was there and discovered you some kind of apology?
I don't know. Are there any Australians ago? I'd love to have. Little Athletics is really big in Australia. What's going to happen? New South Wales are again. New South Wales, Victoria's last year, but New South Wales beating in place like so strong athletes and the whole spread out. But Little Athletics played at fly around 1,000 kids. Doing Little Athletics on some under 7 to generally under 16. And Sally was doing for the Athletics State Championships up there at Bells Queensland in Townsville. And so I had a squad kids there. Actually, Peter and I was coaching seniors and little A's, and so it was Peter, my husband, he coaches jumps, and he's a 9 wave. And we coached in level 5 and whole multis, all sorts of stuff. He had a squad of young kids and older kids as well, and our national championships was on the same weekend as the little A's, so we drew straws. And he went to Melbourne with the seniors, and I went to Townsville with the little A's. And I was standing watching one of our kids do high jump, and the theatre coaches have been high jump, but I was coaching him, who was the sprints. And his mother said, in Little Athletics in Australia, they only go to nationals in 2 age groups, that's under 13, where they take 13 boys and 13 girls to nationals, so it's very, very select from each state. And in under 15, they take 2 girls and 2 boys to nationals, and it's a multi-event, it's a pentathlon. So even under 13, they're expected to do several events. And so Stewie was doing the high jump, the long jump, the triple jump, the hurdles, and the selector sauna, we had to choose a fixed event at state championships so that they could see, you know, where they could slot him in if need be. So we chose the wall. I mean, I was coaching walks as well, so I did a couple of sessions to me, but yeah, I said, don't do it, Stewie, just don't do it. Anyway, he was high jumping and I was on side of Peter, and I said, oh, look, you know, it's between 180 and 1 or something. Oh no, it's being, see how this episode evening. He played a good one, I can't remember what it was, and there was only 3 that did the competition, and so I said to people, I've run out of ideas, you know, I've talked to you about the things that you told me about. Where do I take it from here anyway? So he gave me another tip, so I'll give us 2 tips, and he's cleared up higher and higher, and his knock said, oh look, what's his score on? Because they had the 2 under 30 piss side by side, because this was 18, so they were selecting, like, watching girls and boys together. And so I had a look at this girl, and I said, oh, she's all right. Pretty fast on the runway, and a great deal of pit, but, you know, she did okay. And I think she won that by one as well. She said, oh, she's just going straight off to do 200 hurdles. Let's have a look at her. So I watched her do 200 hurdles. Julie was still actually jumping. So I watched sort of from, you know, the top band. And I was like, oh my gosh, Little A's Australia used 400 hurdle marks for 200 medals, where in the school system in Australia they use tech flights. So she was flying around with 20 yards in between, and she was absolutely flying and then always stopping and jumping over these things and flying as it was split. No idea what she's doing. We didn't know it was, but she's definitely got speed. And so then Rowan introduced me to Sally's mum, and she said, oh, you know, I've been thinking for a fair while about getting some coaching, would you take her on? And I said, look, she's definitely going to make the team, the Little A's team, but it's a national just 3 weeks' time, and if I take her on now, all I'm going to do is confuse the kid. So, you know, if I could have taken her on, you know, hero, had a bit of go to nationals and do really well, but that wasn't in the best interest of the girl. So I said, straight after Little A States, our kids go on a 6 to 7 week break, all OT till we make it compulsory, until they finish school, so right up till they're 17 or 18. And I said, and then we start back on the first week in May, and so bring her down, and she's still interested, so should be.
There's a pretty mature area of judgment call to say we've not a lot of cultures who might self-agree.
What can you do in 3 weeks? But you could do a lot of damage in 3 weeks. You know, if she got there off her own fat, and there's no quite easy.
Chris, you kind of answered this in a way. What was the strength sound above them? Where are they? It's probably said the number was the third close to bounds length.
From a non-physical point of view, Somi's absolute strength is her commit. Like right from the day she started training. So she was still in Prague still, but she started smelling at New South Wales. And so they had this class called K1 or something, or Kindy or something. So they started swimming with same majors out, but they had this prep or Kindy or something first, and then year 1, 2, 3. So if those kids moved to Queensland, they're a year older than our kids. And so she was 13 at grade 7. And I'm still at primary school, and at that time I was the coach of primary school as little. I started coaching at high school, up through to seniors. And so she would catch the bus from school to training, and she slid down her school uniform and clothes on the bus. So she popped up and down when immediately she was surprised. Right. So it's kind of, yeah, but just totally committed. There's nothing in my mind since then that's ever come before training. Error. And met another wedding. I've been coaching on a birthday, but I think year 12 for, you know, and nothing has ever come before training. On rare occasions, she tells me she could change training time so that she could fix something around it, and I'm more than willing to oblige because it's so rare. But she is just so totally committed. She wanted to be the best that she'd be, and she wanted to do it in the Olympics.
So we struck with some money.
And physically she had, physically she had a very good background in gymnastics. So she started in gymnastics when she was 4 and did gymnastics till she was 8 and was so committed to gymnastics in it back then that her mum took her around to one school and then now another school and put her into a school whose principal would allow her to get to school at 9:30 instead of 10 to 9 because she was able to finish her gymnastics session and get to school by 10 to 9. Sweet. I heard
We talked the physicalities a bit this week and I was asking Louise and the fact that perhaps in school physical education now that there's been, if we're not careful, is not the platform of physical competences, but gymnastics for next day.
I've met Trader.
True. I've got 3 grandkids and all of them did kinder gym or gymnastics and I was really thankful that those decisions made my mind to a little her husband. They could swim as well as the training to really did with cardiovascular and abilities as well. And then athletics, I think, and then we're the constant sport and if not gymnastics, maybe dance. But no. So they, and any athlete that comes to use these relative big intuitivity, with spatial awareness, they can include movement control, these crees and codes.
Okay, what
I just heard on the news tonight, and sorry to brain stream. I just heard on the news tonight as I was going just before I went to the track the session this afternoon, that your government announced that the latest legacy of the games will be that all primary school children in the UK will play netball or rugby. They will have to play a team sport, and they suggested netball or rugby. And they finished the story by saying no curriculum has yet been written.
didn't teach that. That's the between colours of making that commitment. This is one thing recommending, of course, another thing with it for being inclined by this force. But that was huge. It's a huge statement. One of the issues that we a couple of lights go on a biased sport. In other words, if you've got prominence of activity on one side of the spine as opposed to the other, golf, tennis, like to say, hurling, so on, it can cause issues. And for all it's common knowledge that SARS had a couple of these. They seem to me you've managed huge well. Before I talk about it.
Yep. I took Sally to see sports position plan because we tore a hammy. That was back in 2005 where I only had my hamstring tear. And she took a cigarette off, still a crop top on and bike pants. And he said to her around, he was just standing there with the end back and he said, so you lead with the left and the driver's the right. Before you just stand there with the other back and I fought. And she turned around, hey, I think we'll put it out. And he said, turned around and said to me, look at the muscular tone and the back, and it was quiet and balanced. From that time on, and not only Sally, but every athlete has come to me, and I had a young woman from New Zealand came to me 2009, Andrea Billis, by the Bright Debaters, and down at It'd Mine Summit in under hurdles. This is Sally, Canada, and Andrea from New Zealand. So we coached her since 4 years before she came to me. She already had back surgery, and she had never in her life done a drill or over hurdles with our officer elite. We always done drills right up. Her Walmart, Sally's Walmart for the Beijing Olympics was it's a D, right a D, and then trying to fight that far. Every single drill we'd ever done was always done by size. So from 2005 onwards, a very, very big part about fleet preparation, because our preparation falls in out again to somehow. The very big part of our winter preparation was this full strike work, and it was only full strike work. So right through that gentle prep phase and sneaking into that specific prep phase.
Just to make sure that everybody understands, 4 strides means that between the hurdles you take, your feet touch the ground 5 times, which means if you're alternating the legs as you go over the hurdles. Normally, as you watch through hurdles, you'll see a 3-stride pattern of the line. The feet touch the ground 4 times. And just in case you're not into it.
So full stride just means to right leg lead, left leg lead, right leg lead. And I got some pretty amazing video of her doing that pretty damn fast.
Right, to accompany her.
On the watch show at the conference. So,
Okay, but it's funny you should say that, because when I was working with Boris Merker and he was having a trouble with his back, and the doctor from the Wolf Farm took a foot out of his spine, of his back, and he cut the foot up in half. So he made a back that was actually 2 right backs, and the back was 2 left backs. And one he was like Twiggy, and the other one ended up playing Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was quite a huge emphasis. But again, from Marguerite's point of view, there is an issue that comes with that, and there's a possibility of ending up with your hips being almost like a helix and putting so much pressure on some of the lumbar vertebrae or intervertebral discs that you get all sorts of problems for all of that. So let's come back to you now. I've talked about Sally's strengths and weaknesses. What are your strengths?
I guess I've learned, particularly over the last 4 years, waiting and selling started to run to forward. And so there's been a lot of pressure at the camp since then. That one of my biggest strengths is that it's my nurturing qualities. So I guess that comes from being a command. Just knowing the girl and knowing the woman and knowing where to press the buttons and like I'm different and when how to plant seeds in her mind so that she goes through processes of changes and she thinks it's real, and then she has ownership of it. And to say, so it's just like a parent that was dressed with a child that is coming up to leaving school, and you have to start. Well, can start. Hopefully, you've had something with all them quite empowering.
What areas should you think we would still like to develop further? Because I'm nice.
A pretty weak on science, very weak on science. But I mean, we are fortunate and strong. We've got some very deep sport-sized and in the Queensland Academy of Sport, and really for me, the science that I need is bike camps. So science of movement in.
Do you not got an entourage around your scientists, but more of those days you can't do your seatbelt weekly?
No. And in fact, I think up to whatever I'm making this a great deal at least. I mean, he's been pretty amazing and has come up with really good stuff for me as well. Like 4 years ago, I used to think that Sal was the fastest in the world in between the hurdles, and the data showed me that she was. But then our bioeconomist, really studied the data and did a whole lot of pressure and told me, well, her run times are faster, but her her rough distance is shorter than basically the rest of the world because she's taking off further from the hurdle landing curve. So there's that flight time thing and flight distance. So she was very, very fast, like 6 beat to lies, 0.6 beat to lies to those 3 steps. But she was only covering, I don't know, let's say 4.5 meters. Why not? Do some maths, Jess. 5.5 meters. Where other girls are covering closer to 6 meters. In times not too much longer than that. So, they kept me grounded. It's horrible. Actually, she's kind of not quite the fastest in the world.
Well, I think 2 nights ago we had just Kansas City radio on. I'm at a deep ball.
I asked the question of coaching
on our young tour
with people around supporting.
And oddly enough, they formed them exactly the same thing. All the scientists are sure. Anybody else know to launch your support show and all this?
No. I think it was a biomechanism.
Only with a feather duster.
Isn't it? Oh, my house?
But yeah, okay, listen, let me decide.
Hang on, let me just talk about biomechanism for a little bit. I'm very specific about when I bring him in. Okay. Throughout the whole preparation phase, we don't need video cameras everywhere. We don't need measurements, so we can tell. And we just want to get on with free flow training. You know, we want to get on with the job and build the fitness that we need for its being part of the season later on. And I didn't bring him being very late to the domestic season because she hasn't heard of the last few years really, up to 2000.
What's that kind of done all the artists after that?
Well, he's really weird. We've had 2 biomagnetis in our operate, and one when I was turning the baby, and she was great, but Sol was always edgy with her. Just always edgy because this Jen just wanted to tell us stuff, and Sol didn't want to know stuff. You know, just tell Sharon, and Sharon, you tell me what to do. Don't you tell her what to do. And then young Daniel came along, and Daniel was doing his PhD in skill acquisition actually, and so I sort of was a bit nervous about that because I thought, oh no, it's just going to happen with these, you know, technique and changes and everything there. And I was kind of building the technique that I'm into, but he's been really good with that, and he's learned from us. We did, I guess, was goes to TP, so. And so now we bounce ideas off each other all the time. And he's on a few times.
We need a person to work. That's your show.
Yeah. Peter looks after her gym program, and Peter has a mentor as well. There's strength and conditioning coach at the Queensland Academy of Sport. He goes up and sits with him and solves the woes of the world about 3 times a year. And I just sit down, live things. Yeah, and Peter's looking for, and any new ideas or getting cut with ways in the season when I was doing. There's a lot of things that we take manward from it because of their back, but we'll still be Jake's in that area. So he runs ideas around Anthony, and then when Peter and I run ideas off each other. Those ideas of each other, and it's really good to have him. He came sort of into the whole program late because we don't put our athletes into gym until they finished high school. So Sally was just turned 18 when he started weighting well, and after, I was already dealing with people, athletes, who has had moments, and he was able to come in, sort of through that back door and have a real fun, take the piss out, but sort of a relationship with her, and he's continually that, where I thought, you two have a big heart.
But I think I'm just wondering now, so you're pretty intense and then totally committed, just one of the most meticulous coaches that have ever come with us. Is it October that you actually can't get away from it? Because surely when you go home, different you, and I'm quite sure you watch television, do other things from time to time, but he's full front on the track of view. So are you.
We actually managed an athletics track on contract, so got to the council as well with him doing that 14.5 years. So it is 24/7, and we run a really big part of our everyday lives is coach education as well. So you run over 60 coaching courses just in Queensland this year. So it's pretty amazing. So it is almost 24/7. We used to go home and sit down, start drinking wine every night, and we decided that wasn't very good for longevity.
But the problem comes when it's 24/7 52.
Yeah, well, Dad, we set aside every single year with trade. This was to New Year off, and don't track at all, even though every second year we're at home on the Gold Coast, and all our athletes know about mine, but we don't track at all. This we have family up in front of the Queensland, so we alternate, it's usually around Easter or straight after the domestic season we try and have a little bit top of last year we've been off the freeze. It was the best way to do it. It's just a bit, I can't even I can't remember the names. I just remember being on the boat. It was great. Walking on the beaches. It's really good. We call 7 days. It was really, really good. But he's a bit messed up with the international athletes because in May, when my youngest was, well, I've got a sister coach now, so she looks after my second squad. So in May, when all the secondaries are having a long break, all the internationals are working pretty hard. I had 2 international. I had another athlete here at the games as well, international, and the plan was to have 4 and 2 got into the Europe.
Editor?
It was the Papua New Guinea sprint up, Toya Wilson, and she made it to end. She was the fastest qualifier in the prelims, so she didn't have a qualifier. She was put one last qualifying to the 182 marker of doing proper qualifying. So she had to run the prelims, and she ran the fastest on the day, 60 something. And then she ran to the hits, and she led Alison Felix for 45 to 50 meters within an altitude, which was pretty exciting. The amazing start. And in the morning, she just got the most dreadful start. But she did a really good start in the evening, and she ran 11:27. DB was 49, so it was a 2.2, so a little retarding, but still significantly beast. It already happened to that.
So let's come back to the distance to become sharp, into the sharp band called these teams. You both...
I did bought rid of many
like the deep different, because I do this, is it? When somebody's come off the track and they've had a dreadful start, as you missed it. Run me through. Immediately taking you back for a warm-up there. It was against the conversation.
Well, of course they had to. Because I'm a team coach for Australia and I wasn't meant to coach you from the 15 to mine, because our camp in Tonbridge went down to 15. I had ran Tonbridge for 3 weeks before that, and then we were both with a host family.
So he was in a deep range with her, and she comes off the track from the station.
PNG officials. I talked to her.
So you have a chance to breathe stay with the...
Yes, yeah. And I talked to her since she came back from the beach, and she was just so excited. And she needs to everybody go and start. And the last session with Sally in Tonbridge was great. She just wait right there. Her Sally was arguing with an appendix break forward.
Okay, let's drag back to another aspect of reality. 2008, runs to that.
2008, I was personal coach, so I didn't see Sol while she went into the release. So that last week was a bit of a problem because she had a back in Hong Kong in their base camp, and to start the last session, they had like a Torado minivan, and she hired her to the back seat. We can just at that social position, and heard her back. This first time that she'd heard us since 2005. So she went into the Danny Tour, paddle extract, and thankfully did get access to me, and I didn't see her again until warm-up for these. Because I was president coach and doing that personal coach class as well. So that was tough. I was sitting in Sky Race 657 middle backs, not the middle, just halfway, a quarter of the way along between the 11 and 1500 start, where she ran that fine. The boy made it down the stairs freaking crash. That was awesome. I thought she'd do something special in that fine because she was just so fired up. So fired up to the semi. It was so good. Semi. I was really grateful to have coaches like Craig Healy right there on the sideline with me during warm-up at second fine, because he's done so many interviews and multi-championships, and he just kept me calm, and in turn we just kept me calm, and I was really grateful. It's among with all that experience was there, and I made a lot from him, and need to see the surprisingly what thing. That was the closest one. I don't know if any of you know, but second to sixth was 200ths of a second.
How would that
60 whole lap. The 66 to 68 was second to sixth.
So when that, now we know she's big time. 2009?
2009, we thought we would be gone. We thought company knew everything, of course. We're doing everything right, and they were, flying for our base camp. And the hamstring was a bit tight, and so she was going to come hamstringing. And the physios did say, and on that thing with the problem he was back. And she said, no. It's a bit touchy, I don't think touch it. I had just swear up hamstring, that's what's tired. And then we're at the end of the sentence in line and at the diving hospital. And she was still around her the back way. And we could deal with the form of this regression. She was out the line straight day.
Anything will teach you?
No trauma interval with back in 2010 at all. It was right ended. 2010, from a performance perspective, was a really messy year because we started our European season and everything. I think she flew on with the Tracy Sajidi raced on the 30s of June, and they shipped on and they entered that years and did too many races. I think 8. Leading into World Cup, which was on the 4th of September. In Croatia and everywhere we'd been in that European build-up was cold and wet, it was really cold. And we went to Croatia and it was just amazing. Plus the Gold Coast, it was really awesome. And so that's kind of lifted the spirits a bit, and she won by a 100th, or maybe not even 100th. I think one win same time as Lola. And then that was a really big win for her, because in 2006, which she ran the first World Cup, and she was just a developing athlete, and that's the first time she broke 13 seconds. So 4 years later, she ran 12 something to lead a World Cup, Continental Cup, it's called now. That was 4th of September, and then we went to Gateshead for a 3 weeks before we went into Delhi, because we were invited by the offering the heart marathon people and the council. And we fought up in Ingleton for 3 weeks in bitterly cold and Gateshead. It was so horrible, really horrible. And all we had in that 3 weeks was that one little street meet. The others were like a rock place. And they just left and go, wow. It was the same track that they take from Natchez. But in Gateshead, they had hurdlers too in the rock place by Visa. It was very bloody messy. But so by the time the girls got on the track and did that one run, they very good. BBC was counting down line. They were going to divide in always 3 minutes, 2 minutes behind the blocks to go off. So there's no time to do anything. And in Self's favour, she just let this quiet, so it was still. So she ran 13 something, it was dreadful. But then she ran 150. Man, hated the facts leading that. She's going 1693 something. It was awesome. And in Gateshead, she got really totally in matches and it's a race that were hard and we did one style session with a couple of the relay boys. It came then for those 6 readers snap and was too far behind the way, and so I needed to give her a focus and interest and then something take a mind off feeding Gateshead. And so we told her to run country at Fonos Bank as well as it is. Yeah, it seemed to be a good idea at the time. Meant that. And then we went into Delhi. So the October race with the Delhi. And that fall season from July to October is really messy. We peaked her the Continental Cup, because that was the only placement in with to get the top 7 on the girls in the world. So that was kind of our peak, but the real peak, because we still had done more things. So, and if she was in really good shape, she shouldn't be running 12.5s consistently in 2010, but didn't just because of the position and the placing or competitions. And so 20 went over, sat down and planned the next 2 years and kind of be fine in detail and I said to her, if you're going to win with gold in London, you're going to have to medal. You don't do that's got to be a priority. And it's got to be an outcome. And she said, no, if I'm going to move top in London, I don't have to win the gold and take a biggie and say,
Prove that, because statistically, I'd say tonight seeing
More close, Greg Huntelaar given a gold medal. Very few athletes actually go back to that close the year before.
World Championships and the Olympic Games. So that's quite a brave step.
the good thing is that I don't know much about this. Fair enough. I don't have a lot of stats in my head like a lot of people do. They amaze me. My husband amazes me, and some of the stats people are coming up with, they just truly amaze me and say, I'm here selling, I'm not aware of that. That's not a bad thing. Yeah, we keep things really simple, but we just do our thing. I guess we try not to worry what the rest of the world's done or what's been done historically before us. But yeah, so down here we played really particularly, and we cut down the number of European competitions. So I did 4 meets, 5 races. London because they had one that had heats, foreigners, and they went into debut the commentators over there, and ran and really very well. See another back issue with debut. Got pretty good at keeping these with a baby. And had teams great, the rest of the athletes who know and see it, and see it's can't walk. They keep it really quarantined, which is great, because Twitter and Facebook are always scary.
So now they're a great day though. They come back, you know that everything's on track. Kamala was through one victory after another, never being beaten at all. When she comes to London, helps for that, because that must have been a hard stop.
Yeah. She got herself very, very anxious. I'd never seen her so nervous before a race as she was at Crystal Palace this year. And timetabling in Crystal Palace was fairly poor, really, and sound. Look at the logistics of the warm-up area and the number of people in there, where the hurdles were positioned. There was so many people on the warm-up track. It was really difficult. They had, and I think they're really beginning to think seriously about whether they have wheelchair banks on at Crystal Palace, because there's 6 lanes. There are probably 60 meters, and they had 2 lanes blocked off for the wheelers, and so they have 4 lanes for everyone else. All the men's hundreds. I think there was long jump. There was 800s. All of that, and all the hurdles. The heat's 16 girls, and they tried to warm up over the hurdles, all tied share 4 lanes. So it was very, very messy, and not being able to do that whole warm up does not worry her. And I'll tell you a story here. The very first year we went to Monaco was in 2008. Her PB was coming over to Europe. Her PB was 12:71, and first race of the plane was Monaco, and she ran 12:50. I don't know if any of you have been to Monaco, but that means the warm-up area is subfield across the road. And so it's camped. And it had 1 lane down one side, but that was very, very old, so they have replaced that now. No hurdles and no blocks. And then Pearson went straight into a vertical warm-up and did the whole entire vertical warm-up without a herb. I mean, those things don't base it. The same thing happened at Lucerne that year. The warm-up area was like a cow paddock on side of a hill in pouring rain. And she went through all the hurdles for this without any veil, and then catch it only dollars because it was really suffering, and everyone was in there. So that sort of thing doesn't lie there. But in London, she's just really, really anxious about the things, I guess, and about the yeah. Yep. So she went out there, attacked from the call room out to the race start, and she always sets her blocks up, gets in the duffel in a 3-step, goes back, double checks them, jumps in, and does 1 start over the hurdles. Well, she set her blocks up, looked at it if they were fine, went straight out, and did stop. And then kind of realised my God, I was supposed to be going out for a hurdle, and she wasn't prepared, and the hurdle was right there. So she needed to do 3 steps. She just kept dying just because, she lost focus. And the lead leg went on with the hundreds and got in out there, and she slid it quite up to the second hurdle. So that threw her right out, and she hurt her back, and she was just like, if anyone, I don't know if anyone was there, but she pulled herself up, dusting herself off, did exactly that with her hand, strolled straight back to the post, jumped in and went straight over to what else. So, as if to say to the whole world, I'm fine. And then, both races were terrible, and she went from the second place, not at all.
So it must be
Her back was really sore. You can see that she can't get that nice or lean, and I'm sure that did it.
So is a mouse stopping from one. I suppose at that point, with everything heading to the begins, the Tress can't be exactly the best we could be around.
They were pretty good. When she stalled straight past them and wouldn't speak to any of them, and she dashed off for it to the 9, so that was a good issue. So, and our Australian media manager, Rosodi, that we stole from me guys, came and asked me if I'd go and speak to media, so that doesn't bother me, so I did that story that I'm happy. But then I had to sort selling the action. She's pretty good. She came down from her disappointment critically, I guess, and refocused and thought, okay, I had a really bad day at the office. And I can't base my feelings and my emotions going into the Olympic Games on that one day, because luckily Paris was the week before, and it was also.
There's sometimes in these situations, I'm actually, and I've kind of an odd advantage to it because it takes the pressure off just
I'm like a dollar for every person and every word that was written saying the same thing, big blessing in skies and whatever. And I really do honestly think that it broke that stress. It interrupted that stress enough so that she could refocus through. And I think she came back to the games a lot better. The heats, asked me to be in a pixel or in the skate talk. That's it. Yeah. I don't think I've ever been so nervous for a race as I was for the heats here in games, because everyone's talking about that fun strike and just at front of 12:54, and I just was nervous that with the speed that I knew that Selk had in her legs, because we peaked her, and extra speed that we probably didn't necessarily account for in the track. Was she just going to annihilate the hurdles? Was she going to get too close to the hurdles and come unstuck really big time and quite dramatically? And so I just started calmly trying to plant the seeds into her head about using the heat, because she said to me about 3 days before that he's just I'm just good, and it's really reached something and got into the head. And I thought, okay. So I just kind of let it slide, and let the next day slide, and then 2 days out I started talking to her about just why that stage there'd be some quick times, and just started talking to her about using the heats as to get a rhythm, to just get a feel for the track. I said you're going to need to get a feel for this track. It's really I did one session once we came here on the Longmont track. So yes, you need to get a feel for the track and a feel for the speed, and thankfully she did that. And she hit her late, recovered really well, the late night was pretty good, and then COVID's head just kind of popped over it. She couldn't even remember whether that was because she knew she had it in the bag or because she had by the fold. But yeah, and then in the semi-final, I said to her, you've got a bit of a feel for the track now. Now you just got to consolidate that and really feel that rhythm before you let loose and final. So that to her before the semi-final, and she went out and she hit her late again. But but she would come a whole lot better and man 39 in the scene. And yeah, but after she'd run that heat the night before, I was really quite calm the next day. So was she. Was treating, yeah, it was quite an feeling going in there quite calm and having her calm as well. So she hit her loading in, but she sure that during fine. She really had to feel for the trap budget.
And that's a great screen she must have once she realized.
And that. Well, I couldn't understand the confusion because athlete seating is very well positioned for coaches, believe me. Now, all of media are kind of head on and a little bit sort of east of head on, and then we're east of them. And the Australian team have went in and saved seats for us all, so it would be great to get right down in the front. So I was in the second row, and so you put that really big trackside flock there, and all the cameramen and the extra photo finish camera. Everything is just right there. And Dawn was in lane 4, so but didn't use lane 9, so she was second one in, and so was in lane 7. And I did not see Dawn coming. I just didn't see her coming. And neither did Sally. Both girls at both press conferences said that they thought they must have been doing really nuts. So I was sitting there saying, I couldn't do any ball because I didn't see anybody. I thought I was so far out in front of her. And I thought she won by 1.5 meters to 2 meters because I could see Wells, and I knew she was well to far Wells, but I just did not see her coming. So luckily she then cruised across the line.
Close to be right, but in the men's event, the young finish for you straight through at the end, and always net up, and then it goes. So can happen in the bike, can.
One thing she said a couple of times in the video is she said, I did a look. She said, I wasn't looking, I was just racing through, but on my singing step past the line, I looked to my left and thought, I do want right there. It could be really close. And because in Beijing, if you happen to go on internet search photos, there's an amazing photo of her about 3 steps before the line, looking like she's running this way and she's looking across that way to see where she is. And she used to do it all the time. And I said to myself, don't do that. And I haven't reminded her for a year because she's been great boot. And I thought it was really funny that she said that probably 3 or 4 times at the press conference straight after that race. When I looked 2 steps after the line. But not the sparking.
Well, for listening I'm getting close towards the end of this thing, but then we come back to Peter. This was a word to describe what is he? His accomplice is near
Missouri. So us down those.
He's by a rock, right? So he's definitely my rock, my absolute rock.
But does he stabilize things for you, or do you stabilize things for you?
Both I think we could feed off each other. Up and up. Great deal. I keep him on the straight and narrow. Up into the fire. If he gets to do straights programs.
See what
I told you 3 weeks ago it was running out. I need it. Rain in me.
and see spot off each other very they're fantastic couple. What do you do we spoke about going in the boat and everything, and we've been talking about whether you focus top or sleep a lot to use a generation of the company. And I have tried to tee you up on this question coming from a station, and I've given you enough time to think about it. About regeneration, recovering, downtime, sanctuary.
I could certainly say we're not good enough. But particularly over the last 4 years, we've tried to make a lot more effort. We've trained up quite a few more course presenters, so we're not running all the courses ourselves, because that was all the weekends. We never coached in Sundays. So we're getting a whole Sundays off. Coaching courses used to be Saturday, Sunday. Peter does the coach on Saturday, well I do an early morning session at 8 o'clock. And that's the session that I call my gut session. And the athletes are quite east of the idea that often I'm not there. So we don't have any plans, even if we're on the coast, I'll meet a student athletes on like a been hour Saturday and going off and having a brunch or down on the beach or up in the mountains or whatever. We've got three break-ins and then daughter and son-in-law, and they're up on a farm in Farl's Basin. Now the corridors of Kansas. We try and get up there 3-4 times a year. Sometimes it's virtually 24, 28 hour turnaround. But we get on a plane and we go. And if to sit on the rain or at the farm, and a couple of kids drink wine.
Sounds like a good bit over in Sharon.
It is lovely. And we're working towards having into more travel, more people trained up to do more activities for us over the next 4 years at least, because I was going through 2016. Our spender was coming down at Aldi School. She's a little bit of a brainiac and goes self-on a boarding and tuition scholarship at Boris Gold Coast, and it's only 4 k's away from us, so we'll be close to her and she'll be close to us. Spend a little bit more time, and no doubt my daughter will use up all my frequent flyers to come down on many weekends to see and go to first ball. So yeah, and just holidays of water for them to without even just a whole week. A whole week is it's pretty special.
Look forward to a few years and just imagine that I'm sitting with somebody or people, crew you deeply respect.
Love all other people in the world, and all send it from to it.
What is probably should feel proud
To hear them say about him.
And I'm the big coach, Sharon.
But he,
I think I'm a very big coach of Sally Pearson. And so I'm very keen to prove myself with our athletes. According to Sally, not necessarily even win a ton of better medals. I've fun coaching a young fellow from India. He came to be as the national open men's group with Nolan. For India, and he set that record when it was up at 20. 12 rated by 1381. And he came back to me with a Dickie Contiero this year and a half that I've had him visit. Instead of being able to come in up the tourist visa, and then fought and they stopped that and never let him come back in again, and it dropped him to Lionel Xiao. It took me until February and February to get him back into Australia this year. So that's been extremely difficult. So he's had what I said he did running needs, which is a liter with me. It's a real conditioning base. He did just 2 races in the domestic season, and he won both of them in Australia. Championships he won them last year as well. And then I brought him over to Europe, and he ran a 12.60s. Oh, he ran 12.71 Australian. 10.70, big PB, and I liked what he had. And broke an 11 when he first came out. Ran 10.8 something last year and 10.70 this year. So I've been with a lot on his speed. And he ran 60 in the rank. No, I think it was. I'm not very good at remembering numbers. But something about very sure. 66 in his first race in with Gary, and then 65 he won the Belgian Nationals. But he tore his happy on with the 9th hurdle. Crashed through the 10th and moved across the line. Grabbed his Stanley landed the 65, so that would be a Olympic hole for us. So it was really heavy high. I sent him back to India 2 days later, only because he was getting trained by our same Australian physios and stuff in our camp at Cologne. I sent him back to India because he needed to go home to get a visa to come into the UK, and they told us that the VA does. 3 weeks later he couldn't walk. We had to still to never beat him. So we've got it back to Australia now, and he's getting drinking out there and rehabbing them, not happy with what they're doing, so I can't wait to get home.
And this for sure now stop coaching with this. First imagine that with a chat cover accountable with that is of orange with it. And
Go.
so with what we did then we what else do you think we like from the beat? But that didn't happen.
I don't know, I was in a really bad relationship at the time. And I would in that day on.
That
And so my daughter and I were 12.5 years on our own. After that, a relationship had ended soon after she started with athletics. No correlation between the two of them. But I just woke up one morning and thought, feed it again. And I met these who athletics. He came to Cairns to do a coaching clinic and started writing to me. And we cultured for a year and a half until I finished school. 1 week later, we moved into the Gold Coast. And
so could it be? But if it can be now, would I'd like to have done like what?
well, I got involved in NFBTV. Like she played T-ball. I don't know if people know what T-ball is. It's like softball, except we put the ball on a stick and then hit. It's not someone throwing it at you. The little kids. And then she was doing a little bit of jazz, ballet, which it really backseat. So yeah, when I got involved in what she got involved in, and it just happened to be athletics and netball, and I really enjoyed it. And that year before we moved to the Gold Coast, the year told me she went to America on an athletics tour with the Tattergates and Peter. And I thought that was the greatest achievement ever for anyone, and it's just to travel and see.
Well, sure.
Take a few kids, rob their parents in ridiculous amounts of money, and take a few kids over to America for a few races. And it was a great experience for her. I'd never been overseas in her life before. And she went over there, but she came back with that asthmatic. Never that, and that's been worth it. She was very, very sick through that year. So when she ended up moved to the Gold Coast a week after she told him the next year she regretted his watch. And
Okay, you're a fantastic coach. I mean, the story you've given is really great because with somebody who starts so very humble with you as a coach, just wanting to help the child, and there you are, looking at something that you've helped with them and looking for you. Just fantastic for it. Any coaching points that you give to these coaches out there?
The main things to remember as you go through this journey.
I think I was wide. I reintroduced myself at breakfast this morning in the village to a gospel class partner, and was Hungarian coach and biomechanist. I'd never heard of the science of biomechanics until Athletics Australia brought him out in 2000, and he did workshops around the country, and he told us in Australia, he went out to grassroots level as well and much more to drills that we're doing with kids and how we're teaching kids. And he told us that our female athletes back then, the dance of Tyler Gabby Green and the Laura Grace girl and Lambert from WA. But they all had this thing called dagger time out the back, and we were actually teaching these kids these drills to create a movement off the ground, fold the leg up, hit the butt, then swing the leg through. He said there's extra movement there, and you don't need it, and it's costing you, and it's creating for instead of breaking. And so I guess from that time on, I've always looked at things and asked why.
Wait, so line.
Why don't they do it then? Why? And I try to make coaches that work with coaching courses ask why. And throughout the day, probably I would ask them why 50 times. And if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But are you thinking about it? And that's really kind of is if I can't hit it to you.
Well, before I finish this, I don't think we have a young man in the room tonight, but he said his love because you actually impressed him, no matter how much it was a bit of a thorn in our side in Singapore.
Stoke and Dairy. Oh, I would sing it. We go.
You saw that Johnny overseas then well, that
You're very Desiree, as well versus a little bit.
Oh, really? I think my bread.
yeah, and she's got a very, I think, world June Jan.
Oh,
Global month before this. So,
And you've actually created a new generation of coaches,
as well as put people top the corner. This gentleman, I don't know about you, I found this fascinating tonight. I think this is Sharon is such a shining beacon for coaches, whether the male or further the female. But in particular, I'd like to think that your huge example will be grasped by women around the world, and will get far more women coaching people onto the big podium. They're a superstar, very close way. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.